That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He lay in his small bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant sound of waves crashing against the rocks below. The journal's words echoed in his mind, over and over. Before dawn, he got up and climbed to the lamp room. He extinguished the light as the first pale rays of sun appeared on the horizon, and then he just stood there, watching the world wake up. He thought about his dreams, about the life he wanted to live, about the places he wanted to see, the person he wanted to become. He thought about Clara, who was probably already in the city by now, starting her new life without him. But he also thought about his father, about the man Thomas used to be, the man he could be again if given the chance, about the promises people make and the ones they can't keep, about forgiveness and what it means to truly let go. Elias made a decision then, standing in the lamp room as the sun rose over the ocean. He didn't know if it was the right decision. He wasn't even sure what the right decision was anymore. But it was his decision, and that had to count for something. He would give it 6 months. 6 months to help his father recover, to make sure the lighthouse was in order, to figure out what needed to be done. And then, when the winter came and the storms rolled in, he would leave. He would pursue his own life, his own dreams. He would forgive himself for wanting more than this. But for now, for these 6 months, he would be present. He would do the work, not out of guilt or obligation, but out of love. Because that's what his mother would have wanted. That's what his father, in his broken way, had always wanted too. The decision didn't make the weight disappear, but it made it bearable. It gave him something he hadn't had in a long time, a sense of control, a path forward, an ending in sight. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Change never does. But gradually, day by day, something shifted in Elias. He stopped moving through life like a prisoner serving a sentence and started approaching each day with intention. He created routines that gave structure to his solitude. In the mornings, after tending to the lighthouse, he would run along the coastal path, pushing his body until his lungs burned and his legs ached. The physical exertion helped quiet the restless thoughts that had been his constant companions. In the afternoons, he started reading. The lighthouse had a small library, books left behind by keepers past, books his mother had loved, books his father had collected but never opened. Elias read voraciously: philosophy, poetry, adventure stories, histories of distant lands. Each book was a window into a different world, and through them he traveled without leaving the lighthouse. He also began to write. At first, just small observations in the margins of the logbook, then longer entries in a notebook he'd found. He wrote about the sea, about the changing weather, about the ships that passed in the distance. He wrote about his feelings, his fears, his hopes. Writing became a way of processing everything he'd been holding inside. Most importantly, his visits to the hospital changed. Instead of sitting in uncomfortable silence, Elias started talking to his father. He told Thomas about the lighthouse, about the books he was reading, about memories from his childhood that he'd thought were lost. At first, Thomas just listened, his expression unreadable. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, something began to thaw. One day, about 2 months after the heart attack, Thomas spoke more than 2 words for the first time. Elias had been telling him about a pod of dolphins he'd seen from the cliff, and his father interrupted him. "Your mother loved dolphins," Thomas said, his voice rough from disuse. "Did you know that? When we were young, before you were born, we took a boat trip out past the bay. A whole pod swam alongside us. She laughed and laughed. I'd never seen her so happy." Elias froze, afraid that if he moved or spoke, his father would retreat back into silence. But Thomas continued. "I've been thinking," the old man said quietly, staring at his hands, "about a lot of things. About how I've failed you. Dad, you haven't. Let me finish, Thomas interrupted, and there was a strength in his voice that Elias hadn't heard in years. I have failed you. I let my grief turn me into something I'm not. I let it steal years we could have had together. I let it trap you in that lighthouse when you should have been out living your life. Tears welled up in Elias's eyes. I read your journal, the one under the floorboard. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have, but I'm glad you did, Thomas said. I wanted you to understand, but I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to explain that sometimes a person can be drowning even on dry land.